Call to order, please. Will everyone please rise, take off your hats for the flag salute? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you want to take the masks off, if you feel comfortable with them off, you can, because we're social distancing. May I have the sunshine law, please?
Notice of this meeting was published in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Okay, there will be no new business after 11 p.m. Have a roll call, please.
Mayor Gilmore? Here. Mr. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mrs. Kelly? Here. Mr. McKay?
Here.
Mr. Jacochi?
Here.
Mrs. Baggio? Here. Mrs. Tyndall? Here. Ms. Costco? Here. Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Here.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mr. Silk? Absent. Mrs. Conguglio? Here. Mr. Murphy? Absent.
Who do we have on the phone? I think Marnie Miller is, right?
Yes.
And residents.
Oh, residents,
There are
okay.
public on the phone
Okay,
for go-to meeting.
all righty. And we do have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay. The first item of new business is, leave my glasses on here, is Mr. Palente, am I pronouncing it correctly?
That will not be heard this evening because of public notice wasn't given correctly.
So we'll do that one April 7th?
Yes, but it doesn't get announced. He has the public.
Okay.
Signs it.
Okay, and next is Mr. or Mrs. Gurman, am I pronouncing that right? Okay. Please step forward to the podium. Both of you can come forward, and Mr. Kingsbury will swear you in.
Raise your right hand, please, and you swear or affirm that the testimony we give tonight is the truth, the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Okay. How may we help you?
So we are looking to, we just moved to Hainesport in October, and we have a corner lot in Creekview, and we're looking to put up a fence closer than the 30-foot code allows. Currently, we have 3 kids. They're all under the age of, they're 7, 5, and 5. One of our 5-year-olds has a sensory processing disorder, which basically means that he's very impulsive, needs to do a lot of touching, a lot of moving, a lot of just being active all the time. We moved from Cherry Hill, where we had a big fenced-in backyard, so we need a fence really badly for them. We also have a dog, so we're just trying to see if we can get as much space to the backyard as possible. I think that the one we proposed is 12 feet from?
Just over 12.
Yeah, just over 12 feet. And there's actually already hedges and bushes in place. There's already a
The planted
property
buffer,
line, yeah.
so
They're already like
there.
6 feet tall, but we just want the security of a fence.
That's on the Heather Lane part,
Yes,
property, right?
Heather and Newton. Mhm.
All right.
I understand you have some photos. I did bring some additional ones that you need to reference.
Yeah, I know you were gonna take pictures of what the yard
Yes,
looked
thank
like, but we didn't know if with the snow you got a chance to and all that. Sure.
I have a copy.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was getting a hit about it was not, so I can't wait.
Any questions from the board? Anybody? Professionals?
So I do have one question. Is the fencing that you're proposing, is that going to be inside of the existing hedges, or are you looking to have that on the outside of this
The
existing?
terminology misses me, so I'm gonna say it like, so it'll be the fence and the bushes will be like on the street side.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What type of fence are you proposing to put up?
We'd like to do a 6-foot privacy vinyl.
If you folks take notice, I went along and took pictures of the neighbor that is technically in back of him, but the driveway is on Heather Lane. So the one concern that I had initially, and then after seeing this, it should be probably the second to the last page, yeah. If you take a look at the neighbor's house on Heather Lane. One of the things we're always concerned about in cases like this is that there's site issues. If you take a look at the gentleman on Heather Lane, one of the things is that the site is really not an issue in backing out that I can see because of the distance from the driveway on Heather all the way back to 2 Newton's backyard. That would be again on the second to last page if you take a look down.
Yeah.
Yep, right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
This is the second to last page.
Yeah.
So
In most
Kathy,
cases,
how far
you don't
back,
have this advantage.
how far back
It's
from the,
late.
from the sidewalk is that fence?
What's
back?
that, okay?
How far back from the sidewalk is that fence, the neighbor's fence?
He would be, this fence would be at the 30-foot setback.
At the limit, right, at the requirement.
And the question was posed, would the fence be on the inside of the planted area there? It would be along the street side along Heather. We were looking, we had to corner it and even it up with the back end of that neighbor's fence that you see there. So that would, in order to even it up with that, that would be well, probably just beyond our planted buffer on their side.
On that side,
on
yeah,
that-
but not on Heather. No.
Right, not on the Heather side.
Perpendicular to that.
So it would reduce the visual impacts along Heather with the vegetation that's already there. But it would be along the outside of the mulch line to be closer to that neighbor's lot that you see on that picture.
Technically, the fence would, if they were going by what is allowed, the fence would be at the corner of back, at the rear of the house, coming off the house. That would pretty much line up with this gentleman's or homeowner's fence. That's that 30-foot setback.
Pretty far, right?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
understand what you're gonna do. You're gonna, just so we have clarity of labeling. You're gonna put the fence, not on the street side of the line of bushes. You're gonna put it on the yard side of the line of bushes.
Yard
Right.
side, correct.
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess what I don't understand is the geometry of connecting your proposed fence, if we agree to it, with the neighboring fence that we're looking at. I'm not quite sure what the geometry is of that connection. Maybe you can help me out.
So maybe the color pictures might help a little bit? Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Well, we'll mark our secretary can mark those and we can pass those around.
Sure.
This fence is going along the side, then right angle turn across the back, and then back down the other side.
The neighbors, yes.
We're talking about this piece right here. Standing in that corner.
And is the variance sought just for this street side fence?
Yes, everything else is the code.
Everything else would be the code?
After took a survey right there.
I was over at the property looking at it, and I'm still a little confused about something, so just bear with me, because there's fencing already at the rear of the property. Is that that's a 6-foot fence also, I believe.
I think it
it's
is
6 foot,
under,
right? Yeah.
no, it is under 6 on
Okay.
that. The other corner of our lot meets up with a 6-foot privacy fence also, so it goes like 6 and then a little lower along our direct back end.
Okay. Now, if we could just shift to the non-Heather side of your house, are you putting a fence all the way along there, or just up to that one fence that's in there partway?
It goes up a little bit further because our house is set further up than the house next door to ours. I don't know if you can tell that from the picture.
Yes?
So, but it still stays within what the code allows.
Okay. So you're going to come out from the house to the property line, and then how far along the property line are you going to go? All the way, or just to their
You're
fence?
saying, are we looking to do the perimeter all the way around, or just connect it?
Yes,
You're
we're going to do
talking-
perimeter all the way
You're talking
around.
about doing the perimeter, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to put a fence up all the way around?
Yes,
Even the back part of the property that has,
Where the fence already is? Yes, we decided we are gonna put a fence there just because that's not vinyl. And we know that the neighbor did mention that when he moved in, that fence was already there. So I know that it's older, so we were just gonna put it all, rather than piece together three different lengths of fences.
okay.
You're gonna have fence next to fence.
Yes. Did that not good?
The fence that's in the back.
I know some of our neighbors have that.
What are you gonna do about the gap between the two fences?
Right, right.
Have a skinny lawnmower.
That's the question, you know.
Just to let you know that Creekview no longer allows wood fencing. It's either vinyl or aluminum. That fence that was there behind them was quite a long time ago. And Creekview allowed wood fencing.
Well, even looking at this plot map that you presented just now as part of the, what is it, Exhibit 1?
Yeah, it's marked 1 and 2.
Yeah. The yellow parts, I thought that's from the first write-up, I thought the yellow parts you were going to put up, but you're saying you're going all the way.
I had highlighted that part because I thought that was the part that was most affected and that was needing the variance for that portion. Since we have initially come to the township about this, we're talking about doing the whole perimeter if possible. But again, I was under the understanding that, again, the variance was needed along that yellow highlighted area.
Okay.
But everything else that they're asking for, if you're standing in front of 2 Newton, to the left and to the rear, is conforming. They wouldn't have to come to the board, I would have given them a permit. Their issue is on Heather side itself. Coming out past that building envelope, which is the setback.
Okay. Now, how far off of Heather are the shrubs?
The shrubs are, well, if the fence is gonna, go ahead and give another.
Yeah, when we did the measurements, it was just over 12 feet, it was like 12.2 feet. Coming up from the near side of the sidewalk toward our house, to the edge of the inner side of the mulch, that was 12.2 feet there. So we were then looking to run the fence along the inside edge of that mulch.
So, okay, so all those shrubs that are in place will be on the outside of your
Yes,
fence,
on
okay?
the street side, yep.
So in essence, you're coming off your house 20 feet,
Yes.
and you have a 12-foot to the, is that 20 feet, is that something you're solid on? Because you're talking about running that other house, I'd imagine theirs is 30 feet, so you're talking about a difference of an angle there of almost 20 feet.
Right. It might not seem like a lot. When we looked at the house, one of the things that we loved about it was the big yard. A lot of the houses we saw in Cherry Hill especially had smaller yards. So what sold us on the house was that it finally had like the size of the house that we needed and the lot that we needed. So then when we found out it was a corner lot and we couldn't do the fence where we thought we could do, because we didn't know that that's how it worked, we were, like, to us, like, the 20 feet are a big deal, especially with 3 kids and a dog and, you know, just thinking about the future, what we're gonna do with our yard, like, so it might not seem like a lot, but like, when you're looking at it, it does seem like a third of the yard kind of goes with that, just how the house, where that line is, and how the houses line up, it takes out a significant chunk.
I will have to say, after 19 years of being here, the majority of people who buy corner lots don't know that they cannot put up 6-foot high fences on that side. That's the unfortunate part.
And this is going to be 6 foot that you're putting in all the way around.
That's what we prefer. Again, if that's not possible and we can't do that, then we can work it out. We prefer 6 feet, just for safety of the kids and just the privacy. As a mom, like, I just feel better about that way. That's what we had at our old house, and I just love that I could send them back there, and I knew nobody could see in there, and it was just, as a safety issue, I feel better about a 6-foot fence. If that can't happen, and that'll give us an extra 20, an extra 20 feet, then it can't happen. But, like, we've had a lot of time to process this since we started looking at the house in August. So at first, we were like, no, if we can't do a 6-foot fence, we'll go in. But I think now that we've lived there and we see the size of the yard, we prefer to have the size.
So you're going to come back in about 10 feet to your neighbor's fence? Right?
But what you have to remember is that if any of you really know Creekview and Lakeside, the lots here are so sometimes off the charts of how they equate to the neighbor's yard. So there's no specific, I mean, you can go through this whole neighborhood and find every corner lot has different setbacks compared to the neighbors. So there's nothing really cohesive in understanding how Quaker did that or why, but it's not a perfect match.
Just a curiosity question. Those hedges that are there, I assume that the reason for not, if you're a corner lot, you can't have more than a 6-foot fence is for visibility kind of issues, right?
Well, and it's through a large portion of the township. In many townships, they don't allow these corners because of site issues.
Right.
They don't want to drive down the street and see everybody has these funnels of fences. So the reason people put bushes there, and again, they're brand new to the development, these have been here apparently for quite a while. But some people do that just for a little bit of privacy, but don't want to go forward with seeking a variance.
Okay.
So my question was, and we got into another discussion. So your fence is going back down the side of your house, and then it's gonna come back in to meet your neighbor's fence, correct?
Yes, but we will put up a fence,
Another fence?
yes.
Yeah. Now, I do notice that's on a berm, the back of his fence, the back corner. Have you figured out how you're gonna address that?
What is the berm?
It's a little higher. The topography of the land is up in the air,
Okay.
That's just,
so you might even be higher.
well, that's a little bit of the grade of the ground first.
Yeah, I see it. So did he, I don't think that's me. No. One's off.
Well, I think you had said that the rest of the fence was going to be up to code. So everything else, we really don't need to worry about on our end. We just need to worry about the part that you're seeking the variance on, right?
Right, that's okay.
And then the bushes that are existing right now, how tall are those?
They're over 6 feet.
They're over 6 feet.
Yeah.
So to me, it doesn't really, I mean, if you put a fence or not, the bushes are taller than your 6-foot fence anyways, and it's not affecting the sight line that you've already said. So to me, I would say it's, go ahead. But
I'd be interested in hearing what the neighbors had to say. Did we notice the neighbors on this 200 feet?
Yep.
Anybody come in? Anybody comments?
They were supportive. The one neighbor in the court was supportive as for the company we were using because he's going to replace his fence. And the neighbor had mentioned to him before we put the variance that the neighbor who
On
lives
Weldon
on Heather.
Circle, directly across, or diagonal across from our house, they'd be facing that Heather fence.
Okay.
And they're supportive of the conversation of it, yeah.
And also, when we had just moved in, the man that lives on Heather, where that driveway that's on Heather, he had mentioned to us that he would like to move forward to doing the same because the fence was there when he came in and he was also like.
So the guy next to you that had to keep his fence at the 30 feet, he's not mad that you're putting the fence at
No, because he
12
put that
feet?
fence in, he moved in when that fence was already.
Okay, yeah, 'cause that's the guy I'd be worried about.
Yep, same.
What the county has to realize is that these variances are based on their own, not because a neighbor got it, not because anybody else got it. It's based on its own individual seeking of a variance on a lot. So
Right.
just want to put that on record that this is
Right.
not an automatic.
Right, absolutely,
because-
definitely.
What about once we give them, if we do in fact give them the variance, what gives them the ability to chop down all them trees if they want to and
I
expose the
can't stop
fence?
them. I mean, there's really no ordinance for me stopping them. You, as the board, can set requirements of what you want. We've done that through this complex before. Some of the things that, you always have to be concerned about is that shrubs and bushes can die off. They can take them down. Unless you mandate something, there's nothing that I can stop them from taking this down.
But the bushes are going to be in their yard inside the fence. Am I right? Or-
Outside.
Outside, okay, that's what, I was asking that before, and I thought you said they were going to be outside, I wanted to clarify
The
that.
terminology misses me and I mess it up every single time, so I say they're on the side of the street, just to be safe.
Okay.
So the point is that to get comfort, to rely on a comfort that, well, the bushes are going to hide most of the fence anyway along that perimeter is not something you necessarily want to hang your hat on because those bushes could disappear on you. Anyway,
Vegetation
so
dies all
the
the time.
decision kind of has to stand on
We
its own
just,
merits.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry. We definitely have no plans of taking the shrubbery down. We like it there, we think it looks nice, so.
And yeah.
Of course, that means that we could easily kill plants too, we're not meant for a green thumb, so, you know, but we have no intention of taking it down.
But the trees provide a nice natural shade and everything during the warm months, which we welcome, because the rest of the yard is a little bare as far as
so
trees.
I don't really see it knocking down.
Well, we could make it a condition of approval that the street side of the fence along Heather, the street, be landscaped, and I would think we could accept the current landscape plan into the future. So that is the landscape plan. So theoretically, if bushes die, then they should be replaced where they were. So that, and we have landscaped on the street side of fences elsewhere, here and there, when a variance was sought to bring them closer to the street.
Correct.
I can think of two, or if the one is in, well, like.
One's on Easton Way.
Yeah, one's on Easton Way. One might
Don't look
be-
at me.
Now, it might be in Sage Run.
We also have one on the corner of Lennox and Creek,
Yeah, about a year ago, maybe.
and yeah, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna look nicer if you keep the shrubs there, I'm sure you can appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's gonna
Yeah.
minimize the impact of the fence.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree with you, and that's,
Yeah.
we're totally with keeping that there.
Yes.
So you can have a problem with us
No,
making the landscape plan part of the approval?
no, that's
If
fine.
we
So it would
sought
just stay as it is, so
to
we
do
have to
that?
maintain it as it is, so if something dies, we need to replace it. Right?
Okay.
I don't want to put that in. I don't want to, because if they choose that they want to pull those shrubs out and they want to put flowers in there instead, or, you know, if they just want to put mulch in, or whatever they want to do, I mean, to me, it doesn't, what's the difference? The guy that's right behind him has got a fence, and there's no shrubbery there, and you see the fence from the street, so, I mean,
But one of the
You know,
things
I-
that we do need to realize is that we've always been consistent in situations like this if they're granted. So, again, his fence is 30 feet back, probably plus. Theirs is going to be 12 feet, I believe is the number. So when you're seeking relief on things, Jill, is that you have to realize is that, you know, sometimes there are things beyond the relief itself. And we have mandated that because we really don't want to see lines of fencing across some of these neighborhoods because we don't permit it in the first place. So they have existing, they could win the lottery tomorrow and move, those requirements are going to go with the land. So the next person can't come in and just pull them out and do what they want, that they have to maintain some sort of diffusing of that fence.
And we've denied a lot of fence on two front yards over the years. And sent
And I did explain that to
sent
them.
a lot of people out of here real mad
Yeah, we.
over the
Very
years.
helpful as we were doing the whole process, we called her 1,800 times because we really were afraid
Yeah.
to purchase the house.
Yeah,
Without
well-
knowing what the outcome would be, and she said, you know, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Hey, anybody on the?
Well, it
board?
looks nice now, and, you know, the impact of the fence is certainly lessened. And you said the neighbors have, you know, nobody's here to fight you on the fence, so that helps.
Any professional comments? You already did yours, I guess.
Plenty of it.
Mr. Kingsbury?
Was it open formally for public comment?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's the only comment I
Okay, now I'll open to public comment. Anybody in public wish to address this request? Step forward or keep your peace. Mr. Kingsbury, did you say you had something?
It'll be online.
Is there anybody on Zoom who wants to come?
There are people on, but they're not objecting to anything.
We're good.
I think we need to be a little more formal about it.
Yeah. Mr. Goldpfeifer, can you ask anybody on
Okay,
Zoom if they have?
is there anybody who's on virtual, have any comments? Okay, thank you. So I'll close public comment, and what's the board's pleasure?
Chairman, I'll make a motion to grant the variance based upon primarily the child welfare hardship issue that they've testified to, but with the condition that the fence be placed, I thought we agreed at 12 or 12 and a half feet back from the curb.
Or sidewalk.
So along the outside of the planted buffer, correct?
And it will be on the house side of the landscape buffer, not the street side of the landscape buffer. And the further condition would be that the landscape buffer, as exists now, will be maintained and into the future, so that no landscape plan is necessary because the landscape plan is already established by the photographs that are a record in this case.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions on the motion?
Does that mean they couldn't extend it in the future?
They can extend the buffer, is that what?
Yeah, could they extend it? Or are they limited to where it is now?
Like add to the shrubs, like add.
Yeah,
to
like
the
if you wanted to
vegetation?
add it to make it in front of the entire,
My condition is a minimum,
Okay,
so
they could do more,
they
they
could
just,
do more if they wanted to, but
they
they
just
couldn't.
can't do less.
Can't do
Couldn't
less.
do
Okay.
less. That's my
Okay.
condition.
Okay,
thank you for asking, that's a good question, thank you.
And there's a second on the floor.
With that note, if you take a look at the front of 2 Newton, they are still limited to how far that they can bring some of that landscaping, because again, now you have that slight triangle
right.
on that corner, so it is a limitation of how far that they can bring that.
Do you understand?
Yes.
If we wanted to put more shrubs, we
Yeah, you
could bring them
can't-
up, yep,
Up to a certain
You can't
point,
get into
but
the,
not-
you
yeah.
can't get into obstructing the corner.
Right.
Yep.
I did recognize that in the reading of the township guidelines, yeah. Yeah. So, one follow-up question, so, we appreciate the motion. So, hopefully this is our forever home, we love it here. Should we ever have to choose to sell the house, then the stipulation would be in place that it would have to be at least the current status along the fence, right, and then maintained beyond that, like, that would have to get passed along to any
Right.
future homeowners?
If they choose to approve this tonight, that approval is going to run with the land.
okay.
Okay.
So 5 people down from you are still going to have to adhere to what they have.
I just wanted to clarify, okay.
So the landscaping plan is the photo of the existing situation,
Okay,
as a minimum, not necessarily a maximum.
okay,
And if a bush does die out,
Yeah.
replace it as, as close as possible to the current status, correct? Okay.
sorry, one more clarification. We're teachers, we follow rules. If like a bush dies out and we replace it, obviously it's not gonna be as big when it starts.
Right.
That's okay?
Something
I
close.
don't need to go find it.
We're reasonable, we're
All
reasonable.
right, I like rules, I like to follow them.
Give it your best try.
Okay.
Okay, we have a roll call, please?
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Tricocci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
Ms. Cosko?
Yes.
And Mr. Goldpfeifer?
Yes. Congratulations, it's
Thank
approved.
you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's been since August, so thank you, and thank you for all of your help, really.
And may I ask, when are you planning to start the fence?
But there wasn't a vinyl shortage. So really, who knows? We have to call the. They've given us an estimate, but we were waiting to hear. So as soon as they get their, the vinyl, I guess, and whenever they have time, but everything's backed up because of
Probably
COVID.
been at least a month and a half to 2 months.
Okay.
minimum.
Okay,
Yeah, preferably in the, in the
Not a
springtime,
shortage of
yeah.
trouble for me, though.
okay. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much for your time.
COVID's good for like everything.
Thank you.
Okay,
Do you?
next is Mrs. Newcomb.
Getting it installed is another one, right? I'm behind the 8 ball, worse and worse. Every week, more behind.
Good evening, folks. Kathy Newcomb, Hainsport Township Zoning Officer. I come to you folks in presenting a administrative request regarding the Bobcat. I'll use that name. I'm sure they have a more formal one. They came to me a couple weeks ago in regards to removing the existing building, bless you,
Bless you.
that was approved during the course of their site plan and such. With that said, I had went to length in speaking with our planner and our attorney. We took a look at the minutes and the resolution, which I believe you folks have. With that said, is that was part of their approval, to keep that. In speaking with them and their contractor, they have found that the building is not as in good a shape as they thought. So,
No surprise there.
well, you give them kudos, they tried. So with that said, is that they are looking to put the building, same footprint, same design, same everything, just they're not going to be building around that. They're going to be having the exact same footprint, size building, the whole 9 yards. With that, I do have Robert Munoz here, the client's attorney, and we have Robert Woods, I believe, sir, on Zoom?
He's on.
For any testimony that the board may request from them. And they give you, there is a layout of the footprint of what it will be like and where the existing building was going to be. We felt and spoke, our professionals as well as Ms. Costco and myself, that we felt doing this administratively would behoove ourselves as well as the applicant in getting them, because they are literally ready to give me their construction permits. So, but we want to make sure that the board was on notice, and then you folks make the decision if you would allow this to be done administratively.
Doesn't this look like a win-win situation for everybody? I mean,
Yes,
it's clearly an upgrade over trying to rehab the existing building.
correct.
It comes as no surprise that the existing building has
In our world of construction, it's
Structural deficiencies.
easier to do it from scratch than it is to rehab it.
Right. And it just seems to me that it would be a good idea just to have some testimony to establish the structural problems with the old building and the reason why this change
Surely.
is appropriate and maybe necessary.
Would you like to have Mr. Munoz come to the...
Who's ever in the best position to testify from
And
first-hand
then we
knowledge.
have Mr. Woods on Zoom.
Counsel can ask the questions of his client, and we can get that.
Am I allowed to remove my mask?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Robert F. Munoz, Davison, Eastman, Munoz, and Payon on behalf of the applicant. I was here, I guess, about a couple of years now ago, getting this approved, and everything was going fine, and I'm out of the picture when the construction portion's going on, and now I'm back. Mr. Woods is online. I think Mr. Woods could explain to the board, if you swear him in, what happened and what the deficiency is in the old building. I'm expecting that he's going to tell you they cannot be sure the footings are going to hold the building. It's really, but if you want to swear, he's remote.
It's not a formal application.
Okay, then I can't see him, but maybe Mr. Woods can explain what the deficiency is, if he can hear me,
May I ask you just one question, not of you per se, but if Mr. Woods could incorporate his answer and answer my question? Because I'm looking at this map.
Yep,
That you're proposing. The existing building is in the blacked out area, right?
that's correct.
Or the outline.
That's correct.
My question has to do with the foundation under the existing building.
Okay.
Is that coming out?
That's exactly what he's going to talk
Okay,
about.
go for it.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so after we were approved by the board, I sought out a few construction professionals to look at the building and map out the plan that we had in place. And there lies some uncertainty with the structure of the building. Number one, the slab, as well as the footings. It's not something that you can explore as the building stands. I had an unfortunate situation with my permanent residence where the house was approved and 5 years later I had a foundation crack and I had to elevate my house and redo the entire foundation. And even though the foundation was approved, we found that the footings didn't meet spec and there was numerous deficiencies. So being that I'm spending a lot of money on a new building, my preference is to have new structure under this building. Secondly, it's a wood pole barn and we're proposing a steel structure. Tying in the two different structures is going to be difficult, and it's been brought to my attention that it can cause a problem in the future with the roof leaking.
Yeah, I agree. I know the building intensely. It's an old wood, it's not that old, but it's just a pole barn with the poles, if you will, just sunk into the ground, and they're probably rotten. I've been in there hundreds of times over the years.
The footprint of the replacement building, I'll call it's going to be the same as the pole barn.
Yes, and it will, and the same business, there's going to be the showroom area. It'll still be the showroom area.
Same function,
Yep.
same dimensions.
Yeah, the building's not changing.
It'll be steel and masonry instead of the pole barn. Is that basically it in a nutshell?
Yep.
I think Mr. McKay, if I can voice my opinion, said it right. This is a win-win situation. Mrs. Baggio?
Somewhere I thought I read that one of the things they're going to do with the new building from scratch is eliminate the second floor.
Yep, the second floor was in the old structure. In the new structure, there will be no second floor. So all the functions will be on the first floor. But the area where the old building is going to be removed was the showroom. It'll continue to be the showroom.
Any other questions from anybody on the board? Professionals? Mrs. Newcomb, no?
No, I agree with your comments in regards to a win-win. We are excited for the business to come here. I think that Hainesport is really good about trying to work with applicants instead of against them. And I think that all the professionals were good enough to be in agreement with myself that this was a chance that we would like to take with the board. And we respect the fact that you based your opinion on that. We didn't want to see you guys, driving down the road and all of a sudden now this building's gone. So because it was part of their approval, we thought that this was the easiest way in hopes to get it resolved for them.
Okay.
I have a question. Is this the new proposed building or the old?
Yes.
building?
That's
It
the
looks to me like this has 2 floors.
Well, that's what they were just saying, is that the old building,
The one that you're showing was the original submission. The new submission just has a one-story floor. What we were asked to do was to provide something that indicated where the old building was.
Oh.
Yeah.
it's still the same height, same footprint. You wouldn't be able to tell from one iota to the other, but the interior is going to now be the one floor instead of...
Even in the architect's pictures, the cars are parked in the same place.
Mr. Miller's on the phone, right?
Yes.
From Alimo, or, right. Mr. Miller, you have any comments on this? Or you're in agreement?
Marty?
Pardon?
Can you try to get his attention?
Mr. Miller?
He's on.
You muted?
Marty? He's not muted.
This is gonna be fast, meeting.
Okay,
He's
did you have any comments, Mr. Taylor?
No, just to echo Ms. Newcomb's comments, this was something that otherwise we wouldn't have brought this before the board, except it was a use variance. There was very specific testimony about preserving that existing portion of the building. They did rely somewhat on the presence of that for the relief for the front yard setback to the parking in the front yard for the outdoor storage of 23.5 feet, where 35 feet was required. So we thought it was most appropriate just to bring them back, give the board a heads up to evaluate that.
Have you had any conversations with Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller and I discussed it this afternoon. He didn't have any issues because it's, from a structural, physical standpoint, it's identical to what was proposed before. And that, he actually called me to say, is there anything on this Bobcat, we really need to do? He might just phone in. And I said, no, it's really sort of just a planning, legal, board, administrative issue.
Okay.
So he was comfortable with that.
Well, I think Mr. Taylor's comments will answer my question, and I'll withdraw it. We don't have to worry about getting in touch with Mr. Miller. Public comments. Any public comments on this application? Hearing none, I will close public comment. Anybody on virtual? We still have people on?
Oh, there's still people on virtual.
Yeah, anybody have a comment or question on this application? Hearing none, we'll close public comment. What's the board's pleasure?
We need a motion, do we?
Need a motion to approve the administrative presentation and not require a formal application.
Well, so moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Trifocci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Kendall? Ms. Pasco?
Yes.
Mr. Colfax?
Yes.
I do have one question, and I don't know if it's to the board or to legal counsel. So Bobcat has given me a demolition permit to remove that. Do we need to wait 30 days for the resolution to pass before I can give him that? Or can we handle that?
Couldn't go have them sign a waiver.
Do that?
Yeah, we could understand that we're doing it at our own risk, yep. If you'll send that to me, I'll sign it.
Okay, good with that? Good with that? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank
sir.
you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yes.
Robert.
Okay. You're welcome, Mr. Woods. Okay, next is the preliminary investigation of the rehabilitation area,
Get old, you see stuff.
and I believe Mr. Taylor is going to address that for us, right?
I will, Mr. Chairman. As soon as I get my laser pointer out. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. Our office has issued a report dated February 21, 2021. It identifies that Township Committee has determined that it's in the best interest of the town to pursue potential rehabilitation of certain lands within the town to advance specific planning and land use goals. The committee adopted Resolution 2020-161-11, asking the Joint Land Use Board to undertake an investigation of certain parcels at the intersection, predominantly at the southwest corner of the intersection of Route 537 Martin Highway and Route 541, the Mount Holly bypass. We identify that it is known as Block 24, lots 4.01, 11, 12.01, 12.02, 12.03, 12.04, 12.05, and Block 24.02, lot 12.04. We did prepare a map in accordance with the redevelopment law. It was on file here at the town. We've included those exhibits in this report. By way of background, as the board knows, under the local redevelopment and housing law, there are two types of designation. One is a redevelopment designation, which has a much stronger requirement and also allows for up to 20 and 30-year pilots and other incentives. The second prong is what's called an area in need of rehabilitation, and that's what's proposed here. It's basically sort of redevelopment light. It's a simplified process. It's easier for projects to qualify. It does not allow for any eminent domain, so anything is completely voluntary in terms of that project moving forward. For some of the board members, you may remember that this is how we handled the Quaker Bancroft Lane rezoning of that area. That was done as a rehabilitation area designation, and then that was able to facilitate some of that rezoning. So we've identified the properties that consist basically of 8 separate tax lots, totaling about 11 acres, as we said, at the southwest corner of the bypass and Marne Highway. The properties really, and as we identify in there, really were part of 2 much larger farms, and there was sort of an interesting history of use and a variety of uses based on an inventory of the historic aerial imagery dating all the way back to 1931, including at a point for a few years in the 50s, there was a baseball field out there, and there was also a track of some sort, and it looks like it may have been a horse track, but it could have been a bicycle or automobile track as well. But you can see a very perfect sort of oval signature in the aerials. Periods where for about 20 years the fields were left fallow, the site was allowed to revegetate toward the rear of that. So it really sort of shows this changing pattern of a variety of uses and sort of underutilization and kind of vacancy. We note the same thing in particular for parcel H, which is the wedge on the east side of the bypass. And while we didn't do a full title search, it looks that the overall farm was, when the Mount Holly bypass was put through, this little wedge, parcel H, which backs up to the cemetery on that east side, was the little tiny wedge that was left over after the county acquired the sufficient land for the bypass to go through. But this was all part of that same parcel. And as most of you know, that parcel has remained just sort of fenced in and lawn, and occasionally there will be a tractor or a shed or something else there, and there are a few signs and billboards, so that site has also been vacant. We note that the 2 buildings that are on site, the residences, are 100 and 140 years in age according to the Mod 4 tax data. And under the statutory criteria for rehabilitation area designation, the 2 most significant criteria that we discussed are criteria 2, which is where more than half of the housing stock in the delineated area is at least 50 years old. As we indicated, both of the properties meet that and actually double that standard, being at least 100 years old. And then also criteria 3, where there is demonstrated a pattern of vacancy, abandonment, or underutilization of those properties within the area. So it is our opinion, as we've summarized in the report, and you can see this report is much thinner than those much thicker redevelopment reports that are bound with a lot of different maps and a lot of that background information. This really can be done simply in a letter form. Municipalities even have the ability to declare their entire municipality as an area in need of rehabilitation. This is something, as we've talked about with some other projects, we use this, the entire downtown of Medford along Stokes Road is an area in need of rehabilitation. It does allow the municipality at their discretion to offer up to a 5-year tax exemption and abatement, again, purely discretionary, and at the same time, it does allow the municipality to develop and implement a redevelopment plan for the site, which is the same process that we went through for that Bancroft Quaker project about 2 years ago, I believe, maybe 3. So that's sort of the short overview of the report. I can answer any questions that the board members may have.
Now, just looking at the schedule of ownership, it appears that all these lots have common ownership.
Yeah, Capri Associates.
I believe they are, and I believe that had been, this is, from my understanding, this was known as the Shin Farm for some period of time.
Well, Bob Shin, if it's the same Shin, used the wedge H, the H lot, as a display area for farm equipment for a brief period of time.
Right.
So that's when he sold farm equipment. And you can imagine that it was more than 20 years ago, I think. In fact, I think the remnants of Shin's sign may still be up on that H property.
I think there might still be a small shed, and the sign may still be there.
Right, it was a red sign.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I remember these things, but I do. So I guess one of the issues, it's of interest, and I don't want to get sidetracked, is that H lot seems to be one that is very difficult to develop, if you could develop it. Now, he was using it to just drop farm equipment off as being visible, to be seen by people, and they come around to a showroom and hopefully buy it. But I don't know what you do with it besides that.
That piece is a bit of a challenge, just because of that awkward triangular configuration.
Right.
What is the zone on that? What zoning is H?
So H is actually zoned industrial.
Okay. And what would the cemetery next door to it be zoned? If you know, I mean, I don't mean to put anyone in the spot.
That should be the R2.
I believe it is the R2.
And I think that H piece is actually, is that the I1 zone?
Yeah.
No, I believe
Is it just I?
I believe that's just I there. If you look on page 3 of 7 of the report, that I zone kind of wraps through, and then the I1 is across there.
Well, page 2 says it's I1, just above the picture.
And so it does.
I don't know that matters for purposes of our analysis tonight.
No, but it's something I would want to correct as we move it forward. So yeah, based on that, I believe it is in the I1 based on that zoning map.
Second page.
Mr. Taylor, that's kind of what I was getting at, a conflict, I thought. That's what I was trying to clarify. But can you look at page 2? I have 2 questions about it. One, under the Y in Marne Highway, that's the church, correct? Christian Faith Assembly?
On the map.
On page 2
Yes.
of your
Yep.
report? Yeah. My question has to do with where the letter C is on the study area. There's a third building on this property. It's a blue building?
The barn.
It's the barn.
It's a barn, it's not a residential, just a
No.
barn, okay. And are both or either of the residences occupied?
They did appear to be.
They're rented out.
Rented, oh, okay.
The D and the E were, the D in particular was his mother's house. And I believe the E was his aunt's house.
And that was the Shin Farm, correct?
Yeah, it's, Shin, Walder, they were all, where the Walders lived across the Deacon Road, that was a larger farm at one point. and, you know, broken up by the family, so they could, you know, daddy died. We're dealing with, one of the relatives now who has died. Helen Walters died in October at 101. And she was the Theodore, they wanted to put an insignia on her grave. And then we're finding out that there was some of those houses, well, there were more houses evidently in that area, a couple were taken down. But it appears that Bob Shin is inheriting a lot of these properties.
Okay.
And a lot of these houses.
Yeah.
Maybe he bought the whole area. And we did redo, I guess that would be B. Here we did B, that house that sits on B.
Okay.
The D house is a unique house in that it has a twin on Madison Avenue, right across from the hospital, on the corner of, I forget the name of that road is. But, they were built, probably relatives or something. in there,
Right.
too.
For the same builder.
Yeah.
Is the decision on this tonight similar to the previous one? We're making a recommendation to the board?
Exactly.
Or not?
Does this meet the statutory criteria for rehabilitation area designation?
Right. In your opinion, it does?
In my opinion, it does, because again, the redevelopment statute sets a pretty low bar for the rehab designation, that really, if there's any underutilization of the properties, or if a majority of the homes are at least 50 years old, they qualify. And in this case, the analysis reveals that at least two of those conditions exist, in our opinion.
Right.
Is designated A, is that part of the cemetery? Or is that the cemetery on the other side of the tracks too?
So it is owned by the same entity, and it's funny because when I went back in time and looked at the historical, aerial imagery, that piece looked like it was part of the cemetery property going back as when it was farmed, back to the 30s. So how that parcel was farmed, was farmed in a similar crop. And you can sort of see those different tones of gray, whereas all of these properties might all be a very dark gray. That A property in the cemetery was a lighter gray. And you can see in those aerials, some of the plow marks. So it was mowed and farmed.
At that point, the bypass did not exist. And when the bypass went in, it went through the cemetery. So I'd be willing to bet that Bob Shin or whoever owned that property at the time either donated it or sold it to be used for the graves that had to be moved from the bypass, or, from the area where the bypass is now located.
Because there is the cemetery also in front of the Americycle, right by where the word bypass is too, but that's a separate cemetery, isn't it?
That's what I'm not sure about.
Wasn't one of them an Oddfellow and the other one St. Mary?
There's
Two cemeteries? There's another cemetery across Marne Highway
across Marne.
from where these cemeteries are.
The other one is,
That's Catholic one, I believe.
One's Brotherhood.
One's connected.
Sacred Heart's across the street, and I think the other one's St. Mary's.
there's
No.
evidently in the
Hudson.
front,
AME?
Yes.
on the A&E on this side.
It is
there's
A&E.
At least two different I had to take
This
an
one's
older woman back there to visit the graves. She's in her 90s. So these cemeteries are dated way back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think,
Dish, when do you suppose the railroad line must have gone in just around the time of World War I, right?
Now, that railroad could have gone in earlier than that. The one going to Smithville, it was actually in the late 1800s, the mid 1800s.
Okay, that's right. There was a station in Smithville when they were operating factory there.
The
That's right.
station in Mount Holly, station in Eadsport,
Same line.
it's the same railroad, but you know, how they moved the graves and how they configured that, that's what's a question to a lot of people. Because part of that, the AMA, was the African American cemetery.
Right.
But the other part, and there, if you go down past the bypass and past, because it's Maple Road, the county has stuff on, there's two entrances to that cemetery on the right. And one is for some, according to this 90-year-old woman I took back there. You have to go in this entrance to go to my relatives.
okay,
The other entrance was something else.
right,
And they didn't connect.
yeah. Yeah, so it looks like when the bypass went through, A was sort of orphaned on this side from the larger cemetery property, much in the same way that H, parcel H, was sort of orphaned on the other side from the larger Shin farm, or whatever the predecessor in title was.
I don't know whether it was totally orphaned or whether they actually bought it to move the graves. There were graves that were utilized
Right.
when the bypass was going through. And Timbuktu had something to do with that. The man that, they just gave a talk on Timbuktu just a couple weeks ago. His relatives were buried in the park where the bypass is. I heard a talk from his mother, and they were very upset because they couldn't find them. But if they had gone to the, and to go to the county to figure it out, because they had to, I knew they had relocated and they had to be able to tell them where. And then about, 5 or 6 years ago, a Boy Scout, with his Eagle Scout badge, on redoing the cemetery, cleaning it up, et cetera. But I just wanted to make sure, I just wanted to ask about A. I didn't want to make this long going on. But that's what the whole area is. This whole area, the Walder's farm was at least 10 acres or more. They were like gentlemen farmers.
Right.
They would sell off lots to, Cousin Susie's getting married.
Right.
She can have this lot and build a house. That type of thing was going on.
Which was pretty common.
Yes.
Interesting.
So Lot A was a cemetery?
So it seems that that was
Great.
dating back from the historic aerials, at least dating back to the 30s, when it appeared that it was farmed, and at a certain point, that it was part of that same property. So, but now it's in common ownership with the rest of all these other properties. So obviously, that wouldn't affect the designation, which we're considering tonight, but obviously, if any kind of a redevelopment plan or development proposal would be considered, we want to have some pretty good answers as to whether or not
Yeah.
there was or is anybody.
Yeah.
Yes. That was my question then. Thank you.
Yeah, that's like some bad mojo, I think.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Would it be, I don't know, I'll use the word appropriate, of us to recommend this to the township committee and add one thing in it? Is there a benefit to us, to township, and Capri, to say that lots A through G be consolidated into one lot? Leave H alone, and maybe they can sell H to the cemetery.
So I think as part of a redevelopment plan, as part of the designation, the designation doesn't really allow specific recommendations for future disposition. So if any redevelopment plan were to move forward, then absolutely, those recommendations. Pretty much whenever there's any project that has more than one lot in it, and it's going to be under common ownership, we always recommend that that be consolidated because it makes assessment easier, it makes zoning enforcement easier. Lots, if it's one site plan, they should all be consolidated for simplicity.
Okay. But now would be premature, is what you're saying?
I believe so.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I have one question, and I don't know if this is a question for here, or if once we would approve it, it needs to go to the township. But one of the things that you had said was with the pilot, that it could be up to 5 years of tax abatement at the township's discretion. Am I remembering that correctly? Okay, so what is the advantage to the township of us granting a developer a pilot? Because it seems like the township would get more money in tax revenue over, let's just use 5 years, over those 5 years, as opposed to a tax abatement instead, right?
So I'll speak globally about the process and not about any one parcel or anything. When the legislature passed the local redevelopment and housing law, and also the separate 5-year tax exemption and abatement law, there's a realization that trying to incentivize some private investment is necessary to get good rehabilitation or redevelopment of properties. An example I can give you directly was the bank in downtown Medford remained vacant for years and years. Medford Township did a rehabilitation area designation and offered a 5-year tax exemption and abatement. That was actually what tipped the scales to have the Pop Shop come in from Collingswood, invest quite a bit of money in that property, realizing that they wouldn't be burdened with that enormous, I shouldn't say enormous, with that large tax increase in year 1 after construction was finished, but it would phase that tax increase in. So the benefit to the community is, instead of a vacant building that we're collecting, I don't want to talk about that site anymore. Hypothetically, instead of having a vacant site that you're collecting $10,000 a year on, or a dilapidated site, under a scenario where you defer that, in year 5, the town gets all of that full assessment, and you've stimulated something to go in there. Does that make sense? There's an incentive there.
But you're saying after year 5, they get the full assessment, meaning the 5 years that they would have been paying taxes, that the township now gets that money?
So there's a
Year 5?
statutory requirement, and I'll talk about sort of larger, some of the 20-year pilot programs. The pilot, and I'll try to oversimplify, the $10,000 base tax on the land stays the same, and there's no reduction of that amount. The pilot is really based on the value of the improvements on the property. So it's nothing lost, it's more of a deferred gain. So you're saying, we're willing, and this is something that Collingswood has used very successfully. If any of you had been to Collingswood 15, 20, 25 years ago, you would not recognize it compared to what they've done today. So to try to stimulate and incentivize restaurants to come in and make it a destination, and to create that snowball effect, you offer some incentives. That then convinces people, yes, let's roll the dice, let's move in there, It'll defer some of our costs, but at the end of that period, now the municipality has a good rateable, full taxation on it, and they have an improved business with increased property values, and that actually increases the property values of the properties on all sides of it. So it becomes this sort of snowball effect, and towns throughout the state are using it very effectively to try to stimulate growth. And it's something that, so we're the planners in Delanco, and after the Dietz and Watson fire that you may have heard about several years ago, they were contemplating rebuilding in that location, which was very important to Delanco, very important to Burlington County and the region to try to preserve those jobs. The township and the county and the state partnered together to try to put some tax incentives together to try to keep Dietz and Watson. Philadelphia did so much more that they eventually, reluctantly, because the Eanies are actually a South Jersey family, but they ended up going to Philadelphia. So New Jersey has realized to posture themselves to be competitive in some of these markets, you have to be able to offer some incentives, or all of those jobs and all of that business will leave the state. And that's sort of a condensed version of that larger issue. Because I don't think any town says, hey, you know what we want to do? We want to offer a tax break. It's really about trying to incentivize growth that in the long term effectuates the town's master plan. It gets that good development that we've contemplated, and at the end of the day, makes the town look better and have a stronger commercial rateable base.
But Scott, there's a difference between an area in need of rehabilitation and an economic redevelopment zone as far as what sort of tax incentives we can offer, correct?
Absolutely.
And I think an area in need of redevelopment is less.
This
than
one,
what we
rehab, yeah, rehab is 5. The one we're doing here is only 5.
Right.
Whereas full redevelopment can be up to 30. But yeah, so it's a tremendous difference.
So if this is all put into one lot then, so let's just say right now, we're collecting $10,000 in taxes. We give them the 5-year pilot, so we still get $10,000 a year existing. Is that correct?
So there is a program set up by the statute that is more of a legal and taxation issue.
Okay.
And I'd want to be able to follow up with you next month with particulars on that.
Okay. So with the pilot though, and you give them the 5 years then, I'm just hypothetically saying that, does that start upon the company or whoever's going to redevelop it? Does it start upon them taking ownership and starting, say, construction, or does it start upon completion of?
So my understanding is it is tied to the certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
Because if something was going to take a year to construct, you wouldn't start assessing it because you can't increase that assessment until after it's built and CO'd. And I know I renovated a small building in Mount Laurel, and my taxes doubled the next year after I got my CO, and I would have loved for them to have been phased in over 5 years. It would have been great.
Right.
That's what happens with the pilot though? It gets phased in over 5 years?
It gets phased in.
But the thing is,
The increase gets phased in.
the thing is, the town winds up with and what we're talking about there is a huge rateable in the relatively near future. 5 years might seem like a long time, but in the life of Hainsport, which is almost 100 years old, I think now, we've found that to offer an incentive to come here generally pays off in dividends down the road, if you will.
Yeah, and the statistics bear that out, and that's why most municipalities will offer some incentives to partner with good commercial developers but you don't see it for residential development unless it's affordable housing. Because getting those good commercial ratables do pay off. You know, it's sort of an investment and partnering in that long-term benefit. Even if there's a little bit of an initial sacrifice, the long-term benefit outweighs that.
Okay. Can I just ask one more question? Sorry. So when this is going to be redeveloped, does it, I want to answer this. We don't have any say as a township. If it is zoned to be commercial, then it can only be commercial. If it's zoned industrial, it can only be industrial unless they come for a variance. Is that correct?
So globally, and I'll speak, and we say this, and I try to summarize this every time we do one of these, and not dissimilar with the redevelopment plan that we had a referral on for the Nissan and the Atlantic Woods property. That Atlantic Woods property, that redevelopment plan allowed permitted uses to be warehouse and distribution facilities. Those are the only uses that are permitted. That redevelopment plan actually takes it a step further, and it prohibits an applicant from submitting to the Joint Land Use Board for a D variance for anything other. Any other use than those specified in the redevelopment plan can only be effectuated by way of an amendment to the redevelopment plan itself. That has to be done by the governing body, referred back to this Joint Land Use Board. So if the zoning was modified on these parcels, from office to commercial, whatever that use is, those are the only uses that may go on there.
Okay, so if people in the township, because there's rumors floating around that the property's been sold and that they're going to build warehouses on it, if the people of the township don't want the warehouses, do they come to the land use board, or do they go to the township board to let their concerns be known?
So they would have the opportunity to do that at a number of points. So the first is, as any project would move forward, and this is that color-coded sheet that we do as projects start to move along, any ordinance would get introduced by township committee. And when I say ordinance, the redevelopment plan itself is adopted by ordinance. So that gets introduced by township committee. That then gets referred here for a master plan consistency. This board usually, while it's not a required public hearing, this board usually opens most things up to the public, that if the public has any comment. So there's an opportunity to get some of that feedback at that point in time. And then also the second reading or public hearing for adoption would also happen at township committee. So that would be the time when anybody would make those comments.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify everything because all of the rumors that get going and the nastiness, I want it to be done. So that's why I asked those questions. So thank you very much for answering them all.
Any other board comments? This does not require public comments, correct, Mr. Kingsbury?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other comments from Mrs. Newcomb? Or, no? What's the board's pleasure?
So I'm looking for a motion here. Mr. Kingsbury, can you recite a proposed motion for me?
I'll have a resolution for this next month, if you can pass a motion to recommend adoption of the report of Taylor Design Group rehabilitation area as shown in the report.
So move.
Second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Dracochi?
Yes.
Ms. Papio?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly? Ms. Cosco?
Yes.
Mr. Paul Piper?
Yes. Okay. This is the point in the meeting where I usually forget to go to minutes, but we're going to do it. I made it a point to make a note to myself, okay? We have minutes from the February 3rd meeting. Need a motion and a second that they be accepted?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Any questions on the motion? If not, roll call, please.
Mrs. Taylor? I'm Mrs. Tyndale. Hey, Mrs. Taylor. I'm tired, sorry.
There's something we'd like to say.
Mrs. Tyndale?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Cochi?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Ms. Casca?
Yes.
And Mr. Krollpfeiffer?
Yes.
No wonder there's a lot of rumors going around.
Okay, we have no resolution, so we'll move to correspondence that's in file. I need a motion that the correspondence be accepted and filed.
I'll make a motion, we receive and file the correspondence.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndale?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Cochi?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Tonight, I wasn't here tonight.
So this is for correspondences.
Yeah, yes.
Ms. Casca?
Yes.
And Mr. Krollpfeiffer?
Yes. Any professional comments? Kingsbury, Mr. Taylor, Mrs. Newcomb, no? Board comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. As a member here about 20, I guess 20-plus years, we've always heard, oh, why don't you build that? Why don't you build this? Why don't you get us a restaurant? Why don't you get... Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I'd love to build a restaurant myself, but I'm not in that business. So we've been lucky as a small town to take advantage of some industry or real estate trends in Hainesport. We've got a couple warehouses planned. We have a large one over there by by Lowe's. It's certainly not as nice as a couple restaurants or some of the things, but this was the opportunity that came our way. And we're lucky that we're turning that into a paying facility. The same thing with the warehousing behind the Nissan Center. There's millions and millions of dollars being spent on remediating that tract. I'm pretty sure, Scott, bear me out, that tract is really polluted as of right now. So we're lucky that we're doing that, and, I get it, and as a member of the committee and the past mayor, it's not the most perfect rateable, but I'm sure the warehouse over by Lowe's will get more attractive as things mature around it. I certainly hope it does, but this is what's come our way, and, we're lucky that we've taken advantage of it. We just deemed that parcel on Moran Highway and the bypass in need of remediation. It's doing nothing right now, and I just want to say thank you to the board for being responsive to market conditions in the real estate business and approving some of these opportunities that have come our way. Certainly the parcel behind Nissan will be much less unattractive than the large warehouse over, by Lowe's initially. Again, I think with some of the buffering that Scott designed and a couple planned buildings in front of it, it'll impact less. So I just want to say thank you as a member of the committee to the board for being responsive.
Okay. Mrs. Kelly?
From the Environmental Commission, we are planning on taking part in Arbor Day. They're looking into planting an oak tree The state tree is the red oak. There may be problems with the red oaks, but some type of an oak is hoped to be planted. As you enter from Warren Highway towards the building, it would be to the right where, in the area where the Christmas tree was, but not exactly there. There will be a dedication for that tree to be dedicated to honor the first responders during this past year and those that were taken from by the virus. So there will be more information coming out in the next couple of weeks. We hope to do it, Arbor Day, I think it's the 3rd of April,
May 1st is the ceremony.
and we hope to do the ceremony on May 1st. That they're tentative plans, to my knowledge, as the dates are tentative, but just wanted to make the board aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Just one comment, next meeting is April 5th, April 7th rather, so. Any comments from the public? No? If not, pardon? Oh, yeah, I just remembered it. Anybody who's, what do we call this, on virtual or?
On remote.
Anybody on remote have any comments, public comments? Can they hear me?
I'm sure. I'll just offer to add, Miss Susan Carpenter is on, and she's on her computer. She added to the discussion with regards to the cemetery, that the small cemetery on the bypass is an old Civil War burial of black soldiers. So she did type that in the comments.
Wow. Okay. Hearing nothing, have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. We're done. Thank you all. Be safe.